Confidence comes from your thoughts. That is the only place. I know we're taught that confidence comes from accomplishments and confidence comes from getting things done and making things happen, and that confidence comes from taking action. It is not true, because we all know of people who are very successful, who are very persistent and consistent and deliberate in taking actions, and they never actually fully realize confidence. And that's because confidence comes from your thoughts, not experience, not a track record of success, and certainly not other people validating you, which if you're in a toxic work environment, you're probably not getting much of that anyway. I'm Elissa Shuck, ex-corporate hiring manager, middle manager turned leadership and career coach. It wasn't all that long ago that I experienced layoffs, narcissistic bosses, toxic work environments, and leadership challenges that had me wondering, why in the world did I ever get into management? But I've also had 12 career promotions. I co-founded a company. I've made multiple industry pivots and turned around poor performing teams. I've achieved everything I set out to do and imagined that I could do in my career. I created the Love Your Work Life podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you do the same. If you're a high-achieving employee and leader, or you're one in the making who's looking to create a career instead of letting it happen on default, who wants a work life that feels happy and satisfying, you're in the right place, my friend. Let's get started. I know a lot about toxic workplaces. I've been in more than one. Looking back at my career, I think of one in particular pretty early on that it was so toxic that I was the senior employee after working there for 3 months. That's how bad the turnover was, because this person that we were working for was not in control, was yelling and screaming and creating all kinds of havoc. Not a fun place to work. Funny story, when I left the job, I was the office manager and I was in charge of payroll. So after one particularly terrible encounter, I went over to my desk, wrote my check out, and walked over to have her sign it so that I could leave. Crazy times. But I do want to recognize the seriousness of this topic, because people are in pain. People are dealing with micromanaging, difficult personalities. One of my toxic workplaces, it was a business that was being run by someone who, after doing some research, I realized was a textbook narcissist. And it wasn't me that was going crazy. It was this person who was behaving in ways that were just unacceptable. So I want to dive into this workshop and give you all of the tips, the tricks, the strategies that I have used personally and that I have helped people leverage who are in a toxic work environment. And sometimes they're in and they want to stay. So we work on how to manage it that way. But a lot of times, if you're like me and you're like a lot of the people that I work with, at some point it becomes unsustainable. And so I have some things for you at the end that'll help you specifically if that is your case, that you're kind of at your breaking point and you're ready to leave, you're ready to put yourself first and get out. So we cover all of the things throughout this webinar. What if I told you that you didn't have to dread going to work every day? That there was a way to not let the toxic person or place diminish you any longer. I was very intentional about picking that word diminish, because that's how it feels. It feels like there are bits and pieces of your self-esteem that are being stripped away, taken away, and you just start to feel diminished as a person. You start to feel maybe even compressed, like you can't actually fulfill your purpose and leverage all of the amazing skills, strengths, and experiences you have, because the toxic environment is pushing you down or sucking the life out of you. But here's what I also know, that there is a proven, repeatable process for not only surviving a toxic workplace, but habits, processes, things that you can do that will help you continue to succeed and even do the best work of your career. That narcissistic boss, I was jumping through a lot of hoops for that person. But the takeaway that I got out of it, the value that I gleaned out of it, was I did some of my best work in my life. And the collaboration between my team and the cross-functional teams as we tried to drive those new results was some of the best that we ever experienced. I can only imagine how far we could have taken it if we were in an environment that was healthy outside of the little microculture that we had together as a team. But these processes, these tips, these strategies are hit my desk there, are absolutely going to work for you. It doesn't matter how long you've been stuck in a toxic environment. It doesn't matter who or what is the cause. A toxic environment doesn't discriminate, right? It's toxic and it affects different people in different ways, but it doesn't have to dominate your experience. There are ways to make it work for you so that it's not working you over. So you're in the right place, 100%. This is for anyone who feels beat down, lost, and disconnected because you're oppressed by a toxic person or place and you want to feel good at work again. So a little bit about my story. I was laid off 3 times in my career. Every one of those times, and including one that I wasn't laid off, I just decided to make a change. I did 4 industry transitions. I looked at all of those layoffs, as challenging as they were, as opportunities. And I'm not saying that I had it all down perfect. There was fear. There was anxiety. Like I said, one of those layoffs was from a very toxic workplace. So I had to work very hard on processing the effects of that toxic workplace so that it didn't follow me into my interviews and into my next job. I've had multiple role transitions. Despite 4 toxic bosses, I've had 12 promotions in my career. I had used a lot of the techniques that I'm teaching you in this workshop to continue to elevate and control my career trajectory despite what was happening around me. And I say aspiring CEO, obviously I'm a CEO of my own business now, but a couple of these toxic workplaces, I was an aspiring CEO. And yet, even though I expressed my desire to be the CEO when the CEO we had at the time had come out of retirement to help scale the company, I told him, when you leave, I want your job. And he was all in. He was ready to help me. And then one day, the owners called and asked me to get all of us executives together because they had a meeting. And guess what? They walked in a new CEO. They knew what my desire was. They bypassed it, brought in someone who was very toxic, and I was out. So trust me, my friends, I know exactly how you feel. I tell all my clients, there is nothing you can say that's going to shock or surprise me about some of the toxic behavior, bad decisions that go on inside of a company. That's why I'm so well equipped to teach you how to manage all of this. here's the most important thing. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. These words by Viktor Frankl and his book, Man's Search for Meaning, became a cornerstone of how I survived and even thrived and found success after being in a highly toxic workplace. Your brain is the thing that you can go back to. Your brain is your moment in time where you can, in any single moment, decide, what am I going to do in this situation? What meaning am I going to attach to what happened to me? My friends, it's never about you. It's always about them. Our superpower is the faculties that we have right here in our brains to choose how we're going to respond to those very difficult circumstances. My promise for you today is 3 things. You're going to regain your confidence and clarity about your value. You're going to learn how to maintain your resilience and impact. And I'm going to give you a process for making decisions and moving forward. Now, like I said, moving forward might be moving out, getting out of there. Moving forward might be how to process and how to stay. I just posted a poll on LinkedIn just this week asking how many people have tried to change a toxic workplace from the inside out. 74% said yes to that question. You might be that person who really believes in the potential of changing from the inside out. And these are the strategies that are going to help you do that. Let's talk about regaining your confidence and clarity about your value, where there's 3 things here that are key to making that happen. Tracking your accomplishments, identifying your workplace behavioral strengths, and connecting the dots from your accomplishments and your strengths to your day-to-day work life. First thing is create a state of mind for critical thinking. And the reason I say this when it comes to capturing your accomplishments is no matter what, our brains always want to go to the negative. One of the first questions I ask a client is, hey, how's it going today? Or what's been happening? Or what's working right now? And they might start out with 1 or 2 words about what's working, and then immediately it slides back to what's not working. So you want to create a state of critical thinking that helps you see things more clearly and objectively. And the great way to do that is to write out in detail an accomplishment you're most proud of. And I mean as much detail as you can think of, and feel the feelings of how great that accomplishment felt. Because it's the feelings, the good feelings, that change your brain chemistry, that raise up that level of critical thinking. Ask yourself these questions. What happened? How many? What were the results? Was there a numerical value associated with it? What improvements or progress did your actions result in for the company? Those are your results, my friend. Nobody can take those away from you. The workplace can be toxic, but it doesn't have to diminish you. Everything you created there, you own. And that's why I love this exercise of writing down your accomplishments. Now, behavioral strength traits that were in play when you had those accomplishments. This is taking it to the next level. Like, are you someone who's patient and easygoing? Or are you someone who is fast-paced and always has a sense of urgency about you? Either way, it's a strength. If you're in a place, in a situation that's allowing you to leverage that strength, that's what creates happiness on the job. Your logic, which is your basis for making decisions, your energy style, your communication style, your leadership style, and what motivates you. Are you someone who is accurate? Are you someone who is adaptable? Someone who is adaptable is not necessarily someone who is very procedural. And that's okay. These are behaviors that underpin your success on the job. So you want to identify these, and you want to give yourself credit for these, and you want to understand that sometimes toxic in a workplace happens because you are being pushed and pulled into behaviors that are out of alignment with your strengths. But if you don't know what those strengths are, then you're not going to have the aha moments of, oh, I'm not going crazy here. This person is pushing me to be out and about in front of people when I'm most comfortable behind the scenes. Very different behavioral strength traits in play. How do you show up? When you start to think about yourself in this way, it's a habit to be created. Nobody teaches us how to do this, my friends. So it's something that you need to spend a little time on. Now, the Personal Dynamics Report describes it in detail with many of these same kind of words. But you can do this for yourself just by spending a little time and saying, okay, how do I show up? What traits do I bring? What characteristics do I have? These behaviors underpin your impact on the day-to-day basis. Well, how do you maintain resilience and impact? Because you've recognized that you have impact, but if you're stuck in a toxic workplace, then there's some other energies in play happening, and they start to wear you down. So you want to maintain your resilience so that you can continue to have the positive impact that you have. So 3 things here. Look for the positive aspects, set your intentions and expectations, and use your RAS, your reticular activating system. Well, the first way to do this is be curious. Always start with the question, what is working? This is how you look for the positive aspect. What is actually working? If there is something to enjoy about the work I'm doing here, what would it be? How can I reframe, fill in the blank? How can I reframe that meeting so I feel better? You walk into a meeting with someone who's very toxic, someone who's very challenging. As soon as you walk out, ask yourself this question: how can I reframe that conversation so I feel better? You are the priority here. And asking yourself the question, what is keeping me here, is another good one. When I was working for that, reporting to that toxic CEO, I asked myself this question on a daily basis: what is keeping me here? And I liked my answers. I liked my answers. I loved my team. I loved the work. I felt like I was making a difference. The interactions with that person weren't affecting the value that I knew I was contributing, and that was keeping me there, at least for a time. The next thing is to be intentional. Break your day into segments and ask yourself, what do I want to happen? And, at the end of that meeting, you're saying, hey, how can I reframe this before you go into the next piece of your day, or before you walk into a meeting that usually goes sideways because of a toxic person or just the toxic environment in general. Ask yourself these questions before you go into that meeting. What do I want to happen? What do I intend to happen? What do I expect to happen? You're taking yourself through these layers of intention and belief. You are experiencing the feelings in advance by taking yourself from what do you want to what you intend to what you expect. It's like if you decide to go on a vacation, say, well, where do I want to go? Great. Okay, you do some research. All right. Intending is you've put some things in play. You bought the tickets. You booked out some time on your schedule, all the things. What do you expect to happen? That's when you start imagining how awesome it's going to be. Well, you can do this in a meeting. And by experiencing the feelings in advance, what you're doing, the positive feelings in advance, you are transferring the belief and enthusiasm to yourself. Someone taught me a long time ago that a sale is nothing more than a transfer of belief and enthusiasm. And if you intend to stay, if you want to continue to succeed and build your resilience and impact, then you're going to have to transfer the belief and enthusiasm about what you're doing and why you're there to yourself. And be selfish that way. Help yourself remember why you're there. That's why we started with accomplishments. Maybe reliving some of those accomplishments is one of the ways you do that as you lead into this. But break your day into segments. Give yourself the space to set up what you want. And use your brain. I call this be smart because our brains are amazing and there to help us. Your reticular activating system is a network of neurons located in the brainstem that, among other functions, act as a gatekeeper for sensory information, filtering incoming stimuli to prioritize the inputs and prevent sensory overload. There's something like we have 60,000 thoughts a day. There's so much sensory overload happening all the time that our brains have to have a way to filter and prioritize all of that information coming through. But what's really cool about it is our brains show us what we are focused on. When you get up, you know how they talk about getting up on the wrong side of the bed and then everything seems to be going wrong all day? Well, it's because you started your day out with that focus of this isn't going to be a good day. Oh my gosh, traffic is terrible. Like it starts snowballing. Well, the beautiful thing is it can snowball the other way as well. You can leverage this to feel better. Here's a practical example of the reticular activating system in action. If you've ever thought about buying a new car and you started picturing it, you did the research and all of the things involved with that new car, the color, the make, the model, eventually you start seeing that car everywhere. You pull into a parking lot. Oh my gosh, there's the car. You're driving down the freeway. Oh my gosh, there's that car. Well, my friends, those cars were always there. What happened is you put enough focus on it that your reticular activating system triggered. And your brain said, oh, this must be important to you. I will open up that filter. I will close off inessential information and I will open up to the thing that you're focused on, that car. I really love what Mel Robbins talks about. She has a great YouTube video about the reticular activating system. She plays a game with herself every day to keep her prove to herself that her reticular activating system is always working for her. And she says that she decides every morning that she's going to see hearts. She's going to see heart shapes all throughout the day. And she sees them in clouds. She sees them in food, wherever. You can try that. It'll prove to you that your reticular activating system is working. It's there for you. And so what it happens when you start looking for good things, you will start seeing good things. And it makes you have more resilience and it helps you accomplish what you want to accomplish, despite the workplace being toxic. How about a process for making decisions and moving forward? And like I said, moving forward for you might be just, it's time for me to get out. It's time for me to run towards something else. I have a wonderful podcast episode about running towards something instead of running away from something. When you discover that the workplace is toxic and there's nothing you can do to change it, then it's very tempting to run away from something. But I want you to run towards something. I want you to move forward. And the 3 techniques for this are managing your thoughts, brainstorming ideas, and evaluating your reasons. That's how you make great decisions. And that's how you run towards something instead of away. Well, the first thing, of course, we must cultivate confidence to banish self-doubt. Confidence comes from your thoughts. That is the only place. I know we're taught that confidence comes from accomplishments and confidence comes from getting things done and making things happen, and that confidence comes from taking action. It is not true, because we all know of people who are very successful, who are very persistent and consistent and deliberate in taking actions, and they never actually fully realize confidence. And that's because confidence comes from your thoughts, not experience, not a track record of success, and certainly not other people validating you, which if you're in a toxic work environment, you're probably not getting much of that anyway. So you need to decide what to think on purpose. You need to pick thoughts that cultivate confidence. Here's a few samples that have worked very well for me, and maybe they'll work for you. But I do encourage you to play around with this and get some other thoughts happening as well. First one is, I will not stop believing in myself under any circumstance. Maybe that's one of those thoughts you have when you walk out of that hard meeting, where if you're like me, I was in a meeting with my CEO. He got on the intercom through the building and invited a bunch of other people from my team, people from cross-functional teams, to come into his office to brainstorm. And basically what he was doing was downplaying my ideas and throwing me under the bus in front of my own team and my colleagues. I had to walk out of that meeting with this thought: I will not stop believing in myself under any circumstances. I value my opinion of myself more highly than others' opinions of me. And if you're in the process of making a decision of doing something different, but maybe you've been in this role for a long time, well, you can pick this one. I can try new things. Even when I don't have the evidence, I can do it. We are always solving problems. Our brains are there for us. Deciding what to think on purpose is what creates confidence, not someone else telling you, not all the accomplishments in the world. Because you've got to own that. One of the best definitions of imposter syndrome I ever heard was that imposter syndrome is the results from the inability of a high achiever to accept and internalize their accomplishments. How do you accept and internalize your accomplishments? Feeling the feelings of it and deciding what to think about it on purpose. That it happened because you're amazing, that it happened because you know what to do, not it was a fluke and, whatever. They just gave me the opportunity and I took it. Own it, my friends. Ending procrastination. When you want to move forward, you've got to end procrastination. Our brains want to keep us safe. That's the primitive part of our brain. The way you end procrastination, again, is focusing on your thoughts, because what you think creates a feeling. How you feel motivates your actions, and actions, especially when they're inspired by good feelings, instead of gritting and grinding it out, is what produces results. And don't fool yourselves. Inaction is an action. It's just passive action. When you're avoiding action, pay attention to the feeling behind it. Reverse engineer this back to, I feel a certain way, which means I must be thinking a certain thing. What you're thinking is creating the feeling. So you ask yourself, what am I thinking that's making me feel this way? I'll never be able to prove myself. Makes you feel pretty bad. This person's never going to believe in me. Makes you feel pretty bad. Well, you feel pretty bad. You've got to do a little detective work. Sometimes people are more feeling oriented and our brains jump over the thought that's creating the feeling because it's such a well-worn neurological pathway. We feel rotten and we don't even have a clue why. Well, it's because we're thinking something. Once you identify it, now you can choose a new intentional thought to create the better feeling and drive the action that you want to take. And the best way to make a decision and the best way to move forward is to make lists. Not a pros and cons list. I am not a fan of pros and cons. And someone commented in the workshop I did on this last week that they agreed with me that cons only had you focusing on the negative. And that is exactly why. That's why you never end up making a decision, because you put negative into the equation. So instead of a pros and cons list, make a reasons list. Reasons to stay, reasons to leave, reasons to this, reasons to that. And now you look at your reasons list for that decision, the yes or the no, the stay or the go, and you decide, which reason list do I like the best? The beauty of this is you can make a decision based on your reasons. And when you love your reasons for a decision, you don't have to second guess or have regrets. Even if you have more information later and you change your mind, you can still look back and not think you made a mistake. You can look back and say, you know what? I feel okay because I loved my reasons for that decision. That's why this works so well. And it helps you move forward and not get stuck in this ping pong of pros and cons, because you can settle and you can love your reasons for that decision. Now, if you're deciding to make a change, a way to kind of help you in your decisions, sometimes in your toxic workplace, you don't even know what you want. You've had the life beat out of you so hard that you're not even sure what's possible for you. So maybe what you want to do is go to ChatGPT and put in a prompt kind of like this. I'm a financial analyst with a specialization in forecasting, data analysis, operations, and business strategy in the nonprofit sector. Give me 5 examples of occupations in other industry sectors that require the same skills I currently possess. Include the job title and the industry, along with a brief description of the role. When you have a block and you feel stuck, because that's what toxic work environments do. It's a vicious cycle. You want to get out, but you feel stuck. You think there's something out there, but you feel stuck. This kind of a prompt can help break open possibilities for you. You might start to see like, hey, I have options. I'm not stuck. Back to Viktor Frankl, your mind is your most important, helpful tool. This other quote from him is so powerful. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. When you feel bad, when you feel beat down, when you feel diminished, the psychological effects of that are excruciating. And when you come to the place where I can't change it from the inside out anymore, that's when the challenge comes to put all of these strategies that I've just taught you into play so that you're changing yourself from the inside out. That's where your power is. That's where you'll start to see what's possible for you. If you're in that place and it's time to make your move, then there's a way that we can work together to make that happen. When I work with people who are ready to run towards something else, the strategies that we use will get you a good result and to get it fast. And that's because we work through 3 main areas. If you want to think about it, the three legs on the stool for the process that I use with folks is, number 1, we magnify your value. The very first thing I do with my clients, with you, if you decide that this is something that makes sense for you, is your personal dynamics report. That is the foundation. That is always the foundation. That is the kickoff meeting, an hour and a half reviewing your personal dynamics report, because it's identifying your natural workplace behavioral strengths and transferable skills. It's describing you in ways that feels validating and empowering so that we can identify not just your career needs, but how to connect your needs to who you are as a person, what makes you tick, so that we can connect the dots from where you are now to where you want to go. Practically speaking, the tactics, resume updates and tailoring, optimizing your LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn's a big, giant search engine. We want people to find you, and we want people to find you for what you want, not just where you've been, what you envision for yourself, not just where you have been trapped. And I'll tell you a little clue here. Look at your LinkedIn profile. I can always tell which jobs someone did not enjoy, either because they were toxic or they had a bad manager, whatever it is. I can always tell which jobs they are because there's almost nothing written in that profile section of LinkedIn. Other jobs that have a lot of content written in, oh, that was a great job. That one was one you liked. So it's easy to avoid optimizing your profile and having a great resume, or you just have mental blocks about all that stuff because you're in the toxic workplace. Then, of course, we're going to do non-creepy, effective networking. I have a major network of people, and I teach you how you can reach out to the decision makers and have it be stress-free. Almost everybody that works for me is not really into social media. They don't want to be gimmicky and doing presentations and commenting on people's posts and sharing information about their knowledge to get attention on LinkedIn. That's not in their nature. You don't have to. Job searchers can be very successful behind the scenes and under the radar, because if you're in a job now, you don't necessarily want to be sending out all this messaging that you're looking. So it's absolutely possible to be very effective and job search under the radar, and that's what we work on. And then it's the unstoppable mindset, managing the toxic, ending imposter syndrome, taking action versus procrastination, and building up your confidence and resilience again. Some of the coaching sessions that we do might have nothing to do with the job search and be all about the really awful way you were treated and how to manage that. Sometimes that's the session, and that's okay, because we've got lots and lots of time together to do whatever we need to do. Make Your Move one-on-one coaching has all of these deliverables. Like I said, the personal dynamics report, the clarity, aligning your next job with your values, the new resume, all these things, the life coaching. Career is about life, 30%. So there's always a little bit of life coaching mixed in with managing a toxic environment and making your move to get out. The cool thing is that you have unlimited access to me. And what that means is multiple sessions a week, offline support, everything aligned to your transition pace. It's 12 weeks together. And so that might mean two sessions a week, or maybe we had one scheduled, but you had an awful meeting with your boss and we need to add another one. We can do that. Here's how I want to close. Nothing is more important than your happiness. Your happiness is the most important thing on the planet. That's because your happiness at work influences your personal life. When you're feeling awful because you're in a job that's beat you down, as hard as you try, it starts to influence your life. You sit there at the dinner table with a blank stare, reliving the craziness, the defeat that happened in the day. I want you to believe that your happiness is the most important thing. And I also want you to believe that it's always, 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 always a good idea to double down on you. You are worth every investment that you make in yourself. I want you to give yourself permission right now and not wait. Because most of the time when you say no, it's not because it's not the right program. It's because you're not sure of your belief in yourself. And the reason you're not sure in your belief in yourself is because the toxic workplace has kicked it out of you. Well, we're going to dream it, we're going to believe it, and we're going to achieve it together. Get signed up. I will get back to you right away with your invitation to your personal dynamics report, and we're going to kick it off with you realizing how truly, truly awesome you are. All right. I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and please visit elissashuck-careercoach.com for more information about how I can help you with your career and leadership goals. Talk to you soon.